Hello everyone, welcome to lessons 7-2 and 7-3 where we will be multiplying polynomials. I know because I'm combining two lessons that might sound like this is going to be a long one, but it's not because part of 7-2 was included in 7-1 notes. So I actually think that you all will find this pretty simple because all we're doing is we're using the distributive property. And this is something y'all know how to do already. So let's go ahead and get started. The first part of this is multiplying monomial by a binomial and trinomial. So that's just taking one term on the outside of the parenthesis and multiplying it by either two terms or three terms on the inside of the parentheses. So let's go ahead and get it started with example number 1. I am going to take 2x and I'm going to multiply it by 3x, and then I'm going to multiply it by a positive 1. Okay, so when you do this, okay, you are going to take 2x and you're going to multiply it by 3x, and then because we're adding here, you're going to add it to 2x times 1. And those are basically the steps that you are taking to solve this problem. So 2x times 3x is going to give me 6x squared. Remember that when you multiply with variables and exponents that you add those exponents together. And then 2x times 1 is just 2x. And that is first answer. All right, you should be able to do example number, or practice number 1 right here. So we're going to multiply 3x times x squared and 3x times y. So we have 3x times x squared, and we're going to add that to 3x times y. Okay. So we have 3x cubed plus 3xy. All right, with example number 2, if it helps, you could put a 1 behind this negative, and we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply it by both of those terms. So negative 1x times 9x minus negative 1x times 7. Oops. All right, so we end up with negative 1 times 9 is negative 9, x times x is x squared. And then we're going to subtract a negative 1x times 7 gives you a negative 7x, right? Now, minus a negative is the same as a positive. So I'm going to change this to a positive here. Okay. And then that's your answer for that one. Right. Next problem, 7x squared times 2x and 7x squared times negative 3y squared. So I have 7x squared times 2x, and I'm going to minus 7x squared times 3y squared. 7x squared times 2x is 14x cubed. And then 7x squared times 3y squared is going to give you 21x squared y squared. Okay, and just so you know, this is as far as we can go because if you remember from adding polynomials and subtracting polynomials, you can only do that if they are like terms. So in this example right here, these are not like terms because this x is squared and this x isn't. These are not like terms because this has an x cubed and this one has just an x and a y, so those aren't alike. And the same for the bottom two. Okay. All right, now for the next ones, we are multiplying by a trinomial. Okay, so this time, instead of writing it all out like this, because a lot of times we could do this in our head, I am just going to multiply these together like this. So a negative 4xy times x squared gives me a negative 4x cubed y. Now, if it helps you to write it out like this, you can, but if you can do this part in your head like this, you could do that as well. Okay. I am adding, okay, but I'm also multiplying by a negative. So I have negative 4xy times y. So that's going to give me a minus, because a negative times a positive 1 is a negative 4. X, and then there are two y's, so y squared. And then I have a negative 4 times a negative 2z squared. So negative 4 times a negative 2 is a positive 8. There's no x's to combine or y's to combine or z's. So this would be your final answer. Practice number 3. I will write this one out just to show you how long it's going to be and why I didn't do it on this one. So we have negative 6ab squared times 5a squared. Okay. And then we have a negative 6ab squared times a positive 3b. And then we have it times this one. Now look how long this is. This gets really long. Let's see if I have enough space. Okay. So again, if it helps you to write them out like this, you can, but you don't have to if you could do this in your head. Negative 6 times 5 is a negative 30. A times a squared is a cubed. B squared times nothing is just b squared. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. And then there's no a to combine it with. B squared times b is b cubed. Okay, now on this one, we have a negative 6 times 2, which gives us a negative 12. So we would have minus a negative 12, but minus a negative is the same as plus. And then I have just in 1a, I have 4 b's, so b to the 4th, and 2 c's, c to the 2nd power. And those, there's no like terms here, so that's my final answer. Very long final answer. Okay, so that is how you multiply a monomial with a binomial and a monomial with a trinomial. Now we are going to come down here. This is something that some of you may have heard before, and we're going to multiply two binomials together. And a lot of times they use the method of FOIL, but you can also treat it as a problem using the distributive property. So I tend to use FOIL, but I will show you one of each and then you can use whatever works for you. Okay, so you can apply the same steps as we did above, okay, which you multiply the first term times this, the first term times that, and then the second and the second, or you can follow the FOIL method. So when we do FOIL, okay, we are going to multiply these first terms together. So find the product of the first two terms in the parentheses, so your x and your x. So x times x gives us x squared, okay? Then we are going to find the product of the two outer terms in the parentheses. So the two outer terms are going to be this one and this one. So basically x times a positive 3 is going to give us, oops, you can't see that very well, is going to give us 3x, okay? Then we are going to take the inner terms, so the 7 times the x, which is going to give us 7x. And then you're going to take the two last terms. So the second term in this binomial, the last term or the second term in this binomial, and 7 times 3, which is 21. Okay, so once you do that, you then need to combine like terms. And if you want, you can add this down here, combine like terms. I didn't put that step here. Because in this problem right here, we have two terms that are alike that we can add together, your 3x and your 7x. So we're gonna put those together in a final answer of x squared plus 3 plus 7 is 10, so 10x. And we're not adding up the exponents. You only do that when you're multiplying with exponents. So that just stays as x plus 21. And that is how you do that one. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and try the practice problem. We are going to start distributing. So we're going to go with the first two terms, a times a, which, oops, I used the wrong one. So a times a, which is a squared. And then a times 7, which is 7a. Then 4 times a, which is 4a. And then 4 times 7, which is 28. Okay, and so then you are going to take and combine like terms. 7a plus 4a is 11a. So we end up with a squared plus 11a plus 28. Okay. All right. Let's go on to page number 2. And page number 2 is full of these practice problems. If you want to go through and try to solve them and then check them at the end, you can. And there's so many just because you will be using this a lot in geometry and in algebra 2. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through these. Okay. So x times x times a negative 7. Watch your signs when you are doing this because this becomes a negative 7x. And then negative 5 times x is a negative 5x. And negative 5 times negative 7 is a positive 35. And then I can add up my two like terms, and I end up with x squared minus 12x plus 35. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that those are correct because I've been making some errors on here that I've had to go back and fix. Okay, right, let's look at practice 8. Okay, so b times b is b squared. B times -3 is minus 3b. -6 times b is minus 6b, and -6 times -3 is plus 18. This is how I want you to show your work. You don't have to draw the arrows, but I would like you to write this, and then I would like you to write your final answer. Okay, so basically these 2 lines is what I'll be looking for in your work. Okay. All right, example 6. So now we have 2a times 3a, which is 6a squared. So we're adding in some coefficients here. 2a times 1 is 2a. 5 times 3a is 15a. And 5 times 1 is 5. Okay. So then I'm going to add up my like terms. And I end up with 6a squared plus 17a plus 5. All right, practice 6. 4c times 1c is 4c squared. 4c times 5 is 20c. 3 times c is 3c. And 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, I'm going to add up my like terms. And I end up with 4c squared plus 23c plus 15. Okay, now we're going to do some problems with subtraction. (8k times a negative 3k is a negative 24k squared. 8k times a negative 5 is a negative 40k. Negative 1 times negative 3 is a positive 3k. And negative 1 times a negative 5 is a positive 5. Okay. So when we add these two, we have to be careful that we're adding a negative 40 plus 3, which is really subtracting. And since 40 is a larger absolute value number, then our answer is going to be negative. So we end up with negative 24k squared minus 37k plus 5. Okay, so I was checking it with my answer key because I did these all already. And my answer key is wrong, but this paper's not wrong. So it's always good to go back and check your answers. Okay, here we go. Negative 6 times 5m is negative 30m squared. Negative 6 times negative 2. Ooh, I couldn't see where that arrow was going. Is a positive 12m. Negative 3 times 5 is minus 15m. And negative 3 times a negative 2 is plus 6. Okay. All right, and these two can combine together so that we end up with negative 30m squared minus 3m plus 6. Okay, let me make sure I didn't mess up. So negative 6 times 5 is negative 30. Negative 6 times a negative 2 is a positive 12. negative 3 times 5 is a negative 15. Okay, so that's right. Okay. There we go. Okay. Now, these next two are being multiplied by trinomials, so a binomial by a trinomial, and it truly is the distributive property that we're going to be using. So multiplying 3x times x squared gives us 3x cubed. 3x times a negative 4x gives us negative 12x squared. And then 3x times a negative 6 gives us a negative 18x. Okay. Now with these, because it is a trinomial, I'm going to set them up just a little bit differently. You don't have to do it this way. You could just continue your long line. I'm going to now distribute my 4 to each term on the inside. So when I start with 4, I get 4 times x squared and I get 4x squared. So I'm going to put that right under here and set it up in columns. Okay. And then 4 times a negative 4x gives me a negative 16x. And 4 times a negative 6 gives me a negative 24. And if I wanted to, I could put, you know, a plus 0 here. Okay. And now I'm going to add all of these together. So I have 3x cubed, and then negative 12 plus 4 gives me 8, negative 8x squared. Negative 18 plus a negative 16 gives me a negative 34x, and then minus 24. And that's my answer for this one. Okay. All right, so for this next one on this page, I'm going to do the same thing I did up here. Okay, so I'm going to start with 2x times 2x squared gives me 2x cubed. 2x times a negative 5x gives me negative 10x squared. And 2x times 8 gives me a 16x. Okay. 7 times 2x squared gives me a positive 14x squared. 7 times a negative 5x gives me a negative 35x. And 7 times 8 gives me a positive 56. Okay, so now I'm going to add up these together. So I have 2x cubed plus 4x squared. And then make sure I'm doing this. Okay, minus 9x plus 56. Oh, that should be a 29. What am I doing? Not a 29, a 19. Ay. There we go. That's the final answer. I've been doing a lot of math today and I think my brain's about to quit on me. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now let's go to page number 3. These are just some different scenarios you might see. They're quite easy, and there's just a rule to them that you could familiarize yourself with. So we are going to do 2 problems that involve squaring the numbers when you have a plus b squared. Okay, so for example, we have x plus 2 squared. So we just rewrite that as x plus 2 times x plus 2. Now, if this represents your A and this represents your B, your answer should be something like this, okay, where your first number is going to be a, whatever a is squared. So in this case, x squared. Your third number is going to be b squared. So if 2 is b, then it's going to be 2 squared, which is 4. So the last term should be 4. And then the middle term is if you take x times 2, you get 2x, and then you multiply that by 2, you should have 4x. So let's see if that's what happens. Okay, you have x times x is x squared, x times 2 is 2x, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 2 is 4. I'm going to combine my like terms, and I will end up with x squared plus 4x plus 4. And I believe that's what I said it would be. So let's look at the second one and kind of just apply this rule to it. This tells me that my first term is going to be whatever a is. So this is a, and this is b. So let's see if this ends up being right. So we're going to take this term and we're going to square it. So you should have 4x squared. Okay. You're going to take your a, you're going to multiply it by your b, and then times that by 2. So 2x times 4 is 8x. 8x times 2 would be 16x. And then the b, you're going to square it to get 16. Okay, so this is the answer that if you follow this like type of rule where you don't have to do all the foiling and everything, this is what you should come up with. So we're going to check that. So we have 2x plus 4 times 2x plus 4. Okay. And 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times 4 is 8x. 4 times 2x is 8x. And 4 times 4 is 16. And then we would need to add our like terms together. And that is correct. So if you're the type of person who can remember these types of rules, and you're more than welcome to do it this way. And that's how this is down here and this one. Now, from now on though, I am going to just go ahead and show you work these out the FOIL method, and then refer back to this to see if it makes sense. Okay, this next problem, we have subtraction instead of addition. And so the only difference, it's the same as what was above. The only difference is that you're going to subtract between the first and the second term instead of add. Okay, so we have x minus 8 times x minus 8. Okay. We have x squared minus 8x minus 8x plus 64. And we can add these two together to get x squared minus 16x plus 64. And that looks like what we have here. This is just subtraction. So so let's look at this next one, see if we can predict what our answer is going to be based on the rule. I'm going to take this and square it, and so I end up with 4x squared. 2x times 7 is 14x, and when I double that, I get 28, and then this is going to be subtraction, so minus 28x. And then negative 7 squared is 49. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out and see if it works. 2x minus 7, 2x minus 7, 4x squared minus 14x minus 14x plus 49. And look at that. That is the answer we got when we used the rule above. Okay. All right, the next set is if you are given two binomials and they're the same, except one is adding a number and the other is subtracting that same number, you should end up with something that looks like this. So again, if this is A and this is B, what they're saying is that our final answer will be A squared minus B squared. So basically X squared minus 3 squared, which would be 9. Okay, so let's see if that's what happens. Okay. X times X is X squared. X times -3 is -3X. 3 plus X is a positive 3X. So I can see that those two are going to cancel each other out. And then 3 times -3 is a -9. And when we add those together, we get 0x, and we don't need to include 0 in our answer. And so then this is what our final answer would be. So that's a pretty simple one right there. So in this case, we should have 25x squared minus 16. So we have 5x times 5x, which is 25x squared. 5x times the -4 is -20x. 4 times 5x is plus 20x, and then 4 times the -4 is minus 16. And there we have it, the same type of answer. Okay, so that is how you multiply monomials. And so I hope you guys are all doing well. And if you have any questions, please come to help class. All right.